glory to Jesus Christ, and welcome to this week's episode of God with Us Live. Every week, we're joined by men and women, monastics, clergy, and laity, exploring exciting and inspiring ways to live our Eastern Catholic faith today. Your host is Father Deacon Nick Medelsky, a husband, father, and deacon of the Ukrainian Catholic Eparchy of St. Nicholas. And now, here's Father Deacon Nick.
Hello once again, God with Us Live listeners. Father Deacon Nick Medelsky, excited as always to be here with you, especially after sort of an extended hiatus due to sickness and everything else going around. So I'm excited to be back with you and excited for our guest today. Michael Davis is the editor of Sophia Journal, the publication put out by the Melkite Eparchy here in the United States. And excited to hear a little bit more about him, about his journey to the Melkite Church, as well as kind of what's up ahead, what's coming down the pike for Sophia Journal. So, Michael, thank you for joining us today. Would you kind of tell our listeners just a little bit about who you are?
Hi, Father, and thank you again for having me on. It's a real pleasure. I'm a loyal listener and proud to be on the show. So I'm the communications director for the Eparchy, sort of newly minted. I've only been doing it for a couple of months. But kind of under the purview of communications, we have, internal, external communications, the media. We have Sophia Press, which is the Melkite Eparchy's, the Melkite Diocese's in-house press, which does our liturgical texts, some history texts, and prayer, the Publican's Prayer Book, and also Sophia Journal, as you mentioned, which is the Diocese of Newton's sort of our in-house magazine. And so we just put the first issue to bed since I've been editor. The first issue since Bishop Francois, our eparch, has been consecrated, and really exciting things ahead. I hope, and we're all really really thrilled to see how the magazine goes, and hoping that it's a reliable, friend, guide, ally in the spiritual life for the Melkites in the United States.
Absolutely. Well, you are the director of communications for the Melkite Eparchy, so obviously you're a Melkite, but your journey didn't start out that way, right? So would you tell us kind of a little bit about how that happened, how you went from where you were at the start to becoming a Melkite?
Yeah, it's a long story. I was raised Presbyterian, but like a lot of people, I lost my faith when I was in middle school. I started to drift away. I unfortunately became involved in the occult and some pretty dark stuff. But when I was a young man, I had a come to Jesus moment again, and I came back to the faith. I came back through the Episcopal Church, actually, through a very conservative, traditional Episcopal Anglican Church in Boston, but eventually found my way into the Catholic Church. I had what I deeply believe to be a miraculous experience of our Lord in the Eucharist, and so I was received into the Roman Catholic Church, and in a parish that celebrated the traditional Latin Mass, and but when I'd been an Anglican, I had always felt myself more sympathetic to the Orthodox than to the Catholics, and so I developed a deep devotion to the Jesus prayer, and I'd always it was the bedrock of my spiritual life, and has been for over a decade, and when I became a Roman Catholic, for some reason, obviously this is not at all what the Church teaches, but I got it into my head that now that I'm a Roman Catholic, I have to pray the Rosary, not the Jesus prayer. So I put the Jesus prayer away for a while, and definitely suffered as a result. And after having a kind of a crisis of faith, I decided to come back to it. I said this was always my lodestar, and I was watching videos. Actually, it was an episode of Pints of Aquinas with Mother Natalia, who I'm sure you know, and who I've never met, but I love dearly. And she was talking about the Jesus prayer in one of the episodes that she's in, And she was talking about how if you're going to incorporate the sort of the rhythmic breathing, the psychosomatic method, that you should do so in consultation with your spiritual director, whatever, your spiritual father, because it can be dangerous. And she didn't specify. So, but I was kind of curious because I've been doing, the breathing method for years, and I didn't think I had any problems. So I was talking to my wife about this, and I said, this is kind of funny. And she said, well, why don't you go talk to the Melkite priest in Nashua, in Manchester, just down the street from our house. And we had friends who were members of that parish, and I'd been to baptisms there, and to one funeral, and I hated it. I loved the priests, I loved the people, but I could not, at that point in my life, I could not stand the liturgy. I was so used to the Latin Mass, which is so quiet and so and so reserved, and then the Melkite liturgy, by comparison, you didn't kneel. First of all, no one was kneeling. That was shocking. They, as far as I could tell, they did 2 communions, right? You could go up for communion, but then there's this, for some reason, they get more bread after the liturgy. It was very loud. Everyone was chanting at the same time. I couldn't hear anything that was going on at the altar. And I was just so bad, just so, befuddled by all of it. And it was really, but then I had this, I met with this, with the Melkite priest to talk about the Jesus prayer. And I called him and I said, I just need, like maybe 10 minutes of your time. And, maybe sometime in the next month. And, as you know, Melkite Eastern Catholic priests are very responsive. And he was like, why don't you just come down now? Just come down to the rectory. So I did, and we spent 3 hours talking. By the end of it, there were tears running down my face because I'd been struggling with my faith. I never stopped believing, in God or in the sacraments or anything like that. But there was just so much about the kind of the Western way of thinking about theology and spirituality that I wasn't really getting nourished by it. And so then I discovered, what we call the Eastern Catholic tradition, the Byzantine tradition. And it was like converting all over again. It was like finding Christ again for the first time. And so I remember I went back to my home and said to my wife, I don't know what we're going to do going forward, where we're going to go to Mass or to liturgy or whatever. But I believe that I'm a Byzantine Christian. I believe this is where I'm supposed to be. And so that's I mean, what's funny is that the next time I went to the Melkite liturgy, I felt like I got it, because the liturgy is so much a reflection of our theology and our spirituality, and vice versa. So once my heart was open to the spirituality and the theology, the liturgy kind of followed. But it was funny because I talked to our priest, Father Tom Steinmetz. We're going to profile him in the next issue, Sophia. He's an amazing man. He was a police officer for 20 years before he was ordained a priest. He ended as a homicide detective, which is actually a very good skill to have as a priest. A good set of skills, But he's been attending. He's in his. I think he's. I don't want to assault him in case he hears this. He's either in his late 60s or his early 70s, and he's been attending the Melkite Church, the same Melkite Church here in New Hampshire, since he was 19, when he was a student at St. Anselm's College. Wow. And he went back when the liturgy was all in Arabic, when very few parishioners even spoke English at all. And he remembers going to make the food for the Lebanese food festival and working in silence because none of the other people who were preparing the kibbeh and the wheat pies spoke English. But he's been there since he was 19, like the 60s. And I remember talking to him and saying to him during our first meeting, I love everything that you're saying, but I really don't like your liturgy. And he said, I didn't either. I said, really? He said, yep. He said, the first 3 times I went, I didn't like it. And then the 4th time, it just clicked. He said, how many times have you been? I said, 3 times. I said, two baptisms and a funeral. He said, come one more time. And the 4th time that I went, it all just came together. And I said, I'm home.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. It's always interesting to me to hear people's faith journeys and kind of how they discovered the Eastern Catholicism, right? Because it's always interesting to hear the different paths God takes us along to bring us home, like you said, right? Home in the end. Um, so kind of thinking along those lines, um, you mentioned different steps in your journey to the Melkite Church. Through we're growing up Presbyterian, some experiences with the occult and things like that, as well as coming to the Episcopalian Church, the Roman Catholic Church, the traditional Latin Mass kind of thing, and then into the Melkite Church. Um, do you feel that journey kind of puts you in in kind of a unique position to witness to people, or gives you any other kind of puts you in a unique position in any way, or kind of helps you?
I've been bumbling along the road for so long, going this way and that way. I hope that there's some use comes out of it. I hope that I have a couple of different perspectives at the very least. And one thing is that I'm very blessed that I was able to experience most of these different traditions that I did. Not the occult. That was a mistake. There's nothing good there. But I'm very grateful that I spent so long in the Latin Church, the Roman Church, because there's so much beauty, there's so much truth there, and I'm so disposed towards intellectual arrogance and triumphalism and stuff. So I could easily see myself becoming, a kind of East is best, West is, But I do think that that Eastern there's just this groundswell of interest in Eastern Catholicism, especially if you think about all the prominent Catholic apologists that are very interested in Eastern Catholicism, like Matt Fradd,
Right.
and Trent Horn, and Michael Lofton, and there's and then all of these people that are also becoming interested in Eastern Orthodoxy. There's clearly Eastern Christianity has something that the West really needs, and people are hungering for it. And I'm lucky that I've been, I've tried out the Protestant church, a couple different Protestant churches I've tried out. I've been in the Roman Catholic Church, and I definitely need the Eastern Church. And I hope that these perspectives, help me be able to bridge the gap between Western peoples, Western Christians, but also non-Christians who aren't being nourished the way that they want to be, who need what only the Eastern traditions can give.
Absolutely. Earlier on, when you're talking about kind of your journey into the Melkite Church, you mentioned the pastor saying, give it 4 tries. On the 4th try, it might click, like it did for him. But is there any other sort of advice, or maybe any suggestions you could give to someone who might be looking to the East, to the Eastern churches, and kind of discerning whether that's a place for them to go?
Well, the most common pushback, the most common opposition I hear from people, we'll bring friends to the liturgy, and they'll say, I love it. I definitely prefer the chant. I prefer, I like that it's traditional, but it's in English. I like that you participate more. I like I like the leavened bread. I like the theology. I like the spirituality. But I'm not Eastern. I'm a Western person. I'm from America. I'm of European ancestry or whatever. And so this isn't my tradition. I don't fit in here. And the thing that I wish people would realize is that, Eastern Christianity is not about geography. It's not about, it's not that because you have this DNA, this genetic makeup, you're therefore more disposed towards a certain kind of liturgy, or that, you have to go to this kind of church in order to be saved. That's actually heresy, as you know.
Right.
And it's what Eastern Christianity is about. It's about our relationship with God and how we approach that relationship. And there's value, there are a lot of people, I do believe, who have what we would call, like Eastern souls, who just need what the East has. And I'm sure that there are a lot of people, unfortunately, born in Eastern countries like Russia, Greece, whatever, who would really benefit from the Latin tradition, who would be more. And I have friends that are like that. I have friends who say, I think that the Eastern approach to confession is very beautiful, but I just want to give a laundry list of sins, and that's what I want to do. If that works for you, then do that. If that's what makes your relationship with God healthier, if that's what sustains you, if that's what makes you feel God's forgiveness, then that's fine. That's beautiful. That's why we have these options in the church. But I think that there are some people who can't do Christianity, who can't do Catholicism that way. And this is why having the Eastern churches here in the West now is such a blessing. I would also say, if there's a wonderful book called The Orthodox Way by Callistus Ware, and it is Orthodox. It's Eastern Orthodox, not Eastern Catholic. But he one of the things that he does is he pulls in a lot of Western sources to illuminate with the Eastern phronema, the Eastern mindset. People like, George Herbert and John Donne, great mystical theologians, poets, in the Western tradition who have a very Eastern mind. In Metropolitan Callistos, of blessed memory, his point is exactly that it's not about geography, that you have these Eastern Christians, so to speak, who were born in the West, who lived their whole life in the West, who were never exposed to Eastern Catholicism or Eastern Orthodoxy. This is not about, your ethnicity. It's not about your geography. It's about your relationship with God.
I couldn't agree more. Beautifully put, really beautifully put. Once again, Father Deacon Nick Medelsky here, speaking with Michael Davis, the communications director for the Eparchy of Newton, the Melkite Eparchy here in the United States, talking a little bit about his background, his unique journey into the Melkite Church, and then we're going to take a short break here. After we come back, we'll speak more about his work at the Eparchy and with Sophia Journal. So stay tuned here on God With Us Live.
Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Scenes with the Saints. Do you know which saint was literally clothed in righteousness? Saint Marcion was born in Rome in the 5th century and educated in Constantinople. After his wealthy parents passed away, Saint Marcion could think of no better way to spend his inheritance than to build, renovate, and adorn churches. As he once said, "If I had a daughter and was giving her in marriage to some nobleman, would I not spend much gold to adorn her as a worthy bride? Here, I am adorning the church, the bride of Christ." Saint Marcion also gave generous alms to the poor. The Patriarch of Constantinople noticed Saint Marcion's holiness and generosity, and so he decided to ordain Marcion a priest, and he appointed him as the treasurer of the Imperial Cathedral of Hagia Sophia. Saint Marcion was overjoyed to minister to both the spiritual and physical needs of the people, but as for himself, he lived very simply, not even owning more than one set of clothing. One day, Saint Marcion was on his way to the consecration of one of the churches he built, which was dedicated to Saint Anastasia. A beggar in tattered clothes stopped Saint Marcion in the street, and he asked for alms. Marcion felt in his pockets, but to his embarrassment, he did not find a single coin to give the poor man. Marcion could not let the man leave empty-handed, so he took off his clothes and gave them to the man. Marcion continued on his way to the church of Saint Anastasia and quickly vested so that no one would see he was in his undergarments. However, during Divine Liturgy, the Patriarch Gennadius noticed that something appeared to be bright and shiny, a garment like something the emperor would wear, underneath St. Marcion's priestly robes. Furious that Marcion would dare to wear such fancy clothing in front of the emperor, the Patriarch demanded an explanation. However, when Marcion took off his vestments, there was no fancy garment to be seen, and Gennadius realized that he had witnessed a miracle. Thank you for listening to this episode of Scenes with the Saints. Join us again next time when we learn more about the lives of these holy men and women.
And welcome back, God With Us Live listeners. Again, Father Deacon Nick Medelsky here on God With Us Live, speaking with Michael Davis from the Eparchy of Newton. He's in charge of communications over there, and part of that, of course, is the Sophia Journal, where you, like you just said, you just put out the first issue that kind of with you at the helm and introducing yourself, and that's kind of how I looked you up and decided to have you on the program today. But even though you're kind of new over there at the Eparchy, this isn't your first foray into publishing and writing. Could you talk a little bit about your background with that?
Yeah, sure. I got my first job in media when I was in college. I went to the University of Sydney, and I was an assistant editor at a literary magazine over there. That was founded by the CIA to combat communism in high culture. So pretty cool. And so then I started writing, for news magazines and whatnot. I came back to the United States, and literally a week after I had my conversion experience, I got an email from a friend of mine who said, "Hey, I was just hired by a British magazine called the Catholic Herald to start a U.S. edition. And I know you're not Catholic, but I know that you're Christian and you're sympathetic to Catholicism, and would you be interested in writing for us every once in a while?" And I said, actually, I decided 5 days ago to become a Catholic.
Right?
Yeah, that's right. And so he said, my friend Robert, he said, "Oh, well, do you want to edit the magazine?" And I was between jobs. I actually hadn't had a job in media since I got back from Australia. So I said, "Yeah, absolutely." And so I was actually a Catholic journalist before I was a Catholic. This was before I was even confirmed. And I did that for, I don't even want to count how many years. It was pretty. It was actually kind of a disaster. But we don't have to go into that. So then that fell apart. I'd like to think it wasn't my fault, and and then but then very shortly after I was after the magazine shut down, I met at a 4th of July party the president of Sophia Institute Press, and which owns Crisis magazine, which your listeners might have heard of. Mm-hmm. And he mentioned to me that he was looking for a new editor, and would I be interested in applying? And I did, and I got that. So I did that for 2 years, I think. I was there, and but I got kind of burnt out by Catholic media, and I really didn't like it. And a lot of, I'm sure that there are some people who can do it and stay spiritually healthy, but I just found that, spending 8 to 12 hours a day thinking about Catholicism, kind of, but actually only about scandals in the church and controversies, right, was really unhealthy, and it was changing, it was poisoning my faith. And so I decided to get out of that. So since, was that 2021, I switched to the book side of Sophia Institute Press, and I continue to work there as an editor, and I'm the general editor for the Sophia Institute Press, which is confusingly obviously the same name as Sophia Press at the Eparchy and Sophia Journal at the Eparchy. But so then I was approached just literally a couple of weeks after we decided to switch to this Melkite parish. I got a text from a friend of mine who had been at this parish saying, the chancellor of the Eparchy is looking for a new comms director. I know you just started going to the Melkite Church, but would you be interested in applying? I think that they're even interviewing Roman Catholics. And I said, yeah, why not? So God provided for me again. And it's actually a part-time job for now. I don't think we have any, but I started this job over the summer, and it's editing the magazine. We're trying to ramp up the press, and there's the Bishop Francois, he just started his second year as Bishop of the Diocese of Newton, and he's unbelievably ambitious in the best way possible. He's got a brilliant organizational mind, but also a heart for Christ. I mean, begins and ends every meeting with prayer, and he's one of those people that bookends everything with prayer. Can't say enough about him. I really, really love him. And but it's been so we've been working together to help all the different parishes stay in touch, because the Diocese of Newton spans all 50 states technically.
Right.
So the bishop is always flying between Massachusetts, California, Michigan, Texas, just visiting parishes, getting to know the people, making sure that the priests' needs are met, and he's not only is he trying to he's trying to update all the diocesan structures and update the magazine, integrating Flocknote into, but he's also traveling constantly, doing the bishop thing, meeting his flock, teaching the faith, and so it's a very, very busy time, probably the busiest time in the history of the Eparchy, and I'm so honored to be part of this moment.
So given kind of some of your past experiences, and I know obviously working as the in communications for Eparchy is different than working for Crisis Magazine, obviously, but what kind of made you decide to apply, to look into the position with the Eparchy, given kind of your background and sort of some of the other irons you had in the fire and things like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the things that I did do a whole lot when I was both at the Catholic Herald and at Crisis, I had a lot to do with diocesan comms guides, right? I worked with a lot, and I built a lot of really strong relationships. David Scott, who's the chancellor for the Diocese of Los Angeles, Archbishop Gomez's diocese, he and I have been friends since I really started in media, and he's been kind of a mentor to me. And Fran Mayer, who used to edit the National Catholic Register, and then he worked for Archbishop Chaput doing comms for him, and I met these guys. I got to know them. We became personal friends, and I just loved what they did. They worked for good bishops. Bishops again who had a heart for Christ and were trying to do good things to their diocese, and at a time when especially the Roman Catholic Church is going through a lot of struggles, and these guys were hardworking, they were optimistic, and they were serving the church. They were really serving the church. They weren't just getting into arguments on the internet like I was. They were they were working in the church for the church, assisting good bishops, trying to make a positive change. And I just always wanted to be on the other side of the table. And I always told them this. I said, I'd really love to do what you guys do. And so when I heard about this opportunity, obviously I jumped. It's in many ways, it was actually a dream come true. It was like a dream I didn't even dare to dream. I never thought that with my background and as a kind of a controversialist, who would want to hire me. But Eastern Catholics are made of very strong stuff, and I really appreciate that.
I can concur on that note there about the stronger stuff. Um, again, you're still fairly new at the eparchy there, but obviously I know you laid out a few points in your introductory letter, I guess you could call it, in the Sophia Journal, the most recent issue. Would you talk about a little bit about what kind of your vision is moving forward? What kind of projects you have in mind? Of course, I'm sure a lot of it is dictated by Bishop Francois. I know he's a mover and a shaker and someone who has a lot of ideas. But could you just speak a little bit about maybe what's coming up, what's coming down the pipe? What's new? What do people have to look forward to?
Yeah, I mean, so the vision, and you're right. I mean, Bishop Francois is the driving force of everything that we're doing now. It's his vision, and his vision is to make Sophia and the eparchy. His real push is to focus on discipleship and what it means to be a disciple of Christ in a modern world, and also how we can help others to become disciples of Christ. So it's not only about being excellent in our own spiritual journeys, but helping others to find Christ in the church. There's a missionary aspect as well, and so we've been thinking, long and hard about how does the media play a role in this? Not just social media, obviously, and podcasts and stuff like this, but and the magazine too, Sophia magazine as well, and so we want to bring in more unique Melkite Eastern Catholic voices. One of the things we're doing, we're really hoping to have regular contributions from Mother Ileana from Christ the Bridegroom Monastery. I hope she doesn't mind my saying this. She said that she was going to pray about it, but she wrote a beautiful book called The Light of His Eyes, which we published at Sophia Institute Press. And as my wife said, this is an instant classic. This is, if you haven't read it, it is one of those things that's going to rank with anything that you find in like 10 classics or whatever. I'm very new to this, by the way. I don't know what the Eastern equivalents of these things are, but we want to be proud of our identity as Eastern Catholics, and to bring those insights into it as well. We also have a new section of the magazine called Melkite Spotlight, where we want to talk about individual Melkites alive today, now active in the church, who are making a real difference in the world. So one of the people were Profan, our parish priest here, who was a cop and became a Melkite priest. We're hoping to profile two deacons. Where they are slips my mind right now, but there's a Melkite parish somewhere in the United States that's been administered by two deacons for quite a long time, because we haven't made them a priest, and they've been doing a phenomenal job. And it's a very early church situation. You know what I mean? The church is being led by the very probati, the worthy men from the community, right? And that's an amazing witness. And Bill Marshner, who one of the founders of Christendom College, is a Melkite. Became a Melkite in the 70s. And but people know him as a theologian and academic. People don't know him as a Melkite. So this is that's another thing that we're really excited about too, is to kind of show off all the great Melkites that we have.
So obviously the Sophia Journal is kind of focused on Melkites, but it's relevant to all of us, right? It'd be of interest to anyone who's an Eastern Catholic, or maybe a Roman Catholic, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And we are. It is a diocesan journal. I mean, we have our around the eparchy section where we talk about all the awesome stuff that our parishes are engaged with. But one of the things that Bishop Francois mentioned early on that we've been talking about is that there is a lot of Catholic Christian magazines, media, whatever out there, but so much of it is given over to controversialism and gossip and whatnot, and there aren't many resources for people who want to be, to want to see the Christ, who don't want to just, they don't want fluff, they don't want to hide from the reality that it's very difficult to be a Christian in the modern world, in the modern West even, who want to face that head on, but who want to do so as would the apostles, as would the fathers of the church, not who want to love what does it mean to love your enemies in the modern world? What does it mean to be a missionary in the post-Christian West? These are questions that, it's not enough to just complain about it and rage about it. We have to think through our actions. And this is what Bishop Francois wants Sophia to be. He wants it to be a resource for all Christians, Melkite, Eastern Catholic broadly, Roman Catholic broadly, even non-Catholic Christians, that they can look to draw, especially from the wisdom of the Eastern tradition, but to learn how to be faithful to Christ, how to live our discipleship in the modern world. So we're very excited about that, especially, and I hope that if anyone listening to this wants to check out the new issue, it's going to be in your local Melkite parish pretty soon, but it's also available for free. Every issue is available for free on our website. Have a read of it. Send me an email. The contact information is all over the website, all over the magazine. And anything that anyone would like to see, I love suggestions. I'm really grateful for them.
So for those people who might be looking for the online copy or to see even the other things that are going on with the Eparchy, where would they go?
So if you go to melkite.org is the Eparchy's website. And then if you click on the resources tab, there's a drop-down box, and hit Sophia Journal. That's easier than me reading the URL. And then again, it's always going to be free there. And the latest issue is up now. And I'd love to hear from folks if they feel like reaching out. We'd sure appreciate that.
Well, once again, thank you so much, Michael, for joining us today and sharing kind of the things coming up there at the Eparchy, especially with Sophia Journal. A lot of exciting things going on, and just a pleasure to talk with you today. So thank you.
Thank you, Father. This really is a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And thank you for joining us today, God With Us Live listeners. Always wonderful to bring these sorts of interviews to you and share the beautiful things going on in our Eastern Catholic churches. God bless.
For this week's episode of God With Us Live. Make sure to tell a friend or two about us and subscribe in your favorite podcast app so you never miss an episode. Don't forget to follow God With Us online on Facebook and Instagram for even more great content about the Eastern Catholic churches. And don't forget to check out all the other great Eastern Catholic podcasts at godwithusradio.org, where faith meets life. God With Us Live is a production of God With Us Radio, hosted, produced, and edited by Nick Modelski. Send us a message at info@godwithusradio.org.